You ready to win your week 8 waiver wire?
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's get to the first guy you need to go get this week. Number 1 is Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver from the Seahawks. Obviously, not used a ton throughout the early part of the season, but with the DK Metcalf injury, this was a huge week for Marquise. Rick, what do you think about Marquise not only going forward, but is he somebody that you can trust on a weekly basis?
I don't know if I would say you can trust them on a weekly basis, but they're going to need another wide receiver to stand up in the absence of DK Metcalf if he misses an extended period of time. And Goodwin is the one with the most experience. He's actually had some production at times in the past. He has shown a decent connection here with Geno Smith over the past couple weeks. Obviously, the big production came after Metcalf went down, but he was already showing a little bit of life before, not a ton. If DK, and it looked bad, if he's going to miss extended period of time, then Marquise Goodwin should get a lot more receptions. What are you thinking about him?
You want a veteran presence in the lineup. And with this team rolling, they're doing well. They beat the Chargers this week. They're going to keep trying to compete. You want your vets in the lineup. The other question that I had, the follow-up I wanted to have for you is why Marquise over D. Eskridge or some of these other names that people are going to want to bring up this week on waivers?
It's that experience. Like I said, Goodwin's had production at times going back to when he was with the 49ers. He's got that just massive speed, right? That's his big skill, is the speed. He can beat people with speed. He can beat people long. And Geno right now is just, he's super accurate. He's connected on over 70% of his throws. So if Goodwin's going to get the targets with DK out of the lineup, then he is going to be a monster. And not that I don't like D. Eskridge. Past D. Eskridge, there's not a lot to get excited about, but I think Goodwin's going to be that guy that gets the action. He had his touchdown, his second touchdown was he went up over somebody, caught a jump ball. I think that's what he's got that the other guys that they've got in there don't have. I do think there could be an uptick for the Noah Fants and Will Dissly's as well, especially in the red zone.
Cade Otton from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know Tampa's offense has been a bit sputtering here as of late, and they're having trouble beating people, but Cade Otton is a guy that's filling in for Cameron Brate, a rookie that they really like that is starting to show out, getting some decent production and getting you some decent looks. If you need tight end help, this guy is getting consistent looks, and that's a big deal. Rick, how do you feel about Otton? And with the tight end landscape we've seen this year, is this a guy that can really help people move towards a playoff push?
Yeah, I was really high on the Buccaneers tight end to start the season, right? When we found out Rob Gronkowski wasn't going to come back, I was high on Cameron Brate, especially with his red zone usage last year, even with Gronkowski on the team, even with Evans and Godwin. They use the tight ends a lot. And if Brate's going to miss a bunch of time, which he's got a neck injury, and who knows how long that's going to be, but Cade Otton filled in nicely for me this week on a couple lineups. I just think that the way they use the tight end, him obviously being the pass catcher at tight end with him out, it's going to be a big, consistent tight end for you down the stretch. Maybe not 25 points, but 10 to 12 points at the tight end week in and week out can really just help you solidify that spot if you don't have the top option. Plus, even if you do have a top option, we're going to have bye weeks coming up and guys missing time where you could fill him in. For example, I've got him in spots where I've got Darren Waller. So he was a nice little fill in that didn't kill my lineup where I had Waller and I had picked up Otton. So that's going to be big. If he can just stay consistently 10, 12 points, that'd be big for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Parris Campbell, wide receiver from the Colts. He's beginning to get a little bit more action. These last 2 weeks, he's been seeing double-digit targets. This offense is beginning to do something here, beginning to cook a little bit, and Parris Campbell's being a big part of this. The question I have for you, Rick, with Parris Campbell, why Parris Campbell? Alec Pierce is getting action. Pittman's getting action. What's going on with this offense that's starting to open up more targets for some of these other guys that aren't the top two?
First off, the Colts defense just hasn't been what people thought it was going to be. So they're giving up a lot of points and they have to throw a ton. And it hasn't been pretty, especially Colts fans are not happy with the way the season's going so far. But Parris is getting involved. And not only that, but he's catching a high percentage of his targets. So that's what we really want to see out of somebody that gets a bunch of targets, is that they catch a bunch of them, right? It does us no good if they're getting 12 targets and only catching 4. He's caught 28 out of his 38 targets so far this year. He's got big play threat ability. If they don't stop people on defense, they're going to have to continue to just chuck the ball. And it looks like he's going to get a ton of targets. And again, we talked about Marquise Goodwin earlier. Campbell is the same type of wide receiver, right? He's had production when he's on the field in the past. He's had a lot of injuries. He's another veteran presence. He's think just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure he's got the most tenure and the most experience experience out of any wide receiver for the Colts,
Good, yeah.
because he was drafted in the Andrew Luck days, and
He's been with the team a few years now.
yeah, and I think everybody else is younger now. He's a veteran presence, and I think that he's going to continue to get a ton of targets, and he might not put up the 100, 150 yard games that a lot of guys do that get the 12 targets. If he's going to catch 10 of them, I mean, there's your 10 points right there, right? The yardage is a bonus, and then if he gets into the end zone like he did today, it's a huge day for a guy like Parris Campbell. The talent's never really been the worry. It's just, can he get on the field, and then can he earn the targets? And now he's not only earning the targets, but he is taking complete advantage of it and putting up some good numbers on the targets that he gets. So what more could we ask for really out of a wide receiver that we're picking up off the waivers?
Yeah, he's quickly going to push for consideration as a flex option as we get into these deeper into the bye weeks. So definitely an interesting guy to grab and stack. Next up, we're going to talk Mecole Hardman, wide receiver from the Chiefs. Now, obviously, week 7 was a big game. 3 touchdowns doesn't happen all that often for especially a guy like Mecole, who hasn't had it, I don't think, ever in his career. You're starting to see him get a little bit more action. This offense is beginning to gel with the moving on of Tyreek Hill. People are trying to figure out what this offense looks like. Juju's getting action. Mecole's getting action. MVS is getting action. This offense is beginning to cook and churn, just like we're seeing with some of these other offenses. Mecole is a guy that we're seeing maybe not necessarily as many targets, but consistently he's catching, just like you mentioned, catching what's coming his way. What do you think about him as a flex option moving forward as well, like Parris Campbell?
Yeah, the usage you talk about is going to be very interesting, because I think what Kansas City's trying to do now that they're getting MVS involved as the deep threat, they're getting Juju involved as like the security blanket as a wide receiver. Obviously, Kelsey's the big security blanket for that team. But when it comes to the wide receiver, that seems to be Juju now. And then now they've got Mecole Hardman, and today they kind of used like Debo Light, right? And he can make stuff happen. He's a very athletic wide receiver that can, now we're seeing, get a lot of run plays. Both of his run attempts today went for touchdowns. Looked very good on them. If they're going to use him in that vein and he's not getting the big targets, he's still going to have opportunity to make big plays. And in this offense, we want as many touches as possible. They obviously don't trust their running backs to get all the carries inside the red zone and inside the 10-yard line. One of his touchdowns today, I think, was like 8 yards or something. The other one was like 20. If they're going to use him in that vein a lot, he could score a lot of fantasy points for us. Now, I do think it's going to be up and down, but with bye weeks and everything, you're going to be looking for players like this that have big week potential for that ceiling play when you're missing guys. I think Hardman fits into that mold, and if they continue to use him this way, I want to get him before people see this happening multiple weeks in a row, right? Yeah. So I don't think I would necessarily drop a real solid option for him, but if you have room to add that boomer bust player that can fill in on weeks when guys are on bye, then I think Hardman is a great one, because he's in a great offense, he's got a great quarterback, and he's getting used in very creative ways by Andy Reid, who we know is a genius when it comes to drawing up plays and putting his players in the best spot to succeed.
Yep, absolutely. Great choice. And I guess the question I would have is, so with some of these injuries that we've seen here recently, even as of today, we're going to see a couple of other big name players who've been going off. Do you drop one of those in a redraft format to pick them up? Breece Hall, or one of these guys that's probably got a knee injury that's going to end his season. Do you feel comfortable targeting a guy like Mecole for this, or are you going to just look for their backup if he's available?
Michael Carter is going to be rostered in a lot of spots. So if you have Breece Hall, I could definitely see that. If you don't need to go out and get another running back for running back depth, we've seen DK Metcalf go down. If you need a wide receiver to fill in for DK Metcalf because we find out he's going to be out 6 weeks, we're halfway through the season now. So if somebody's out 6 weeks, like, you can't wait on them to come back. If you have an IR spot, obviously put them on the IR spot just in case they do get back in time. But you got to worry about winning now. And if you're not 7-0, then you can't risk losing 4 weeks when you're 4-3 through 7, right? If you lose 4 weeks because you don't have somebody to fill in, then that's an issue. So I do think Mecole Hardman is definitely a guy that you could pick up in that situation, but it just may not be. I guess DK Metcalf wasn't really consistently putting up big numbers, but Mecole is going to be boomer bust, right? He might score you 6 points. He might score you 26, but I want that ceiling play when I'm missing guys, because when you're missing those good guys that get you 20 points, I want a player to fill in that could get the 20 points. And Mecole Hardman is in that vein where he could get you a big week because of just that being in that offense, the different type of usage. So I like Mecole Hardman a lot for those types of situations.
And if you like what you're seeing here, don't forget, like and subscribe so you can keep getting these waiver videos. Next up, Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver from the Giants. Looks like he's finally healthy. He's had a couple of good weeks in a row, starting to look like one of the better options in this game. And though Darius Slayton had a nice, early part of the game, Wan'Dale's really the guy that they were looking at throughout the game. He's getting consistent looks. You can see even this week, had 8 targets, caught 6 of them for 50 yards. You add a touchdown into that, it looks like he had a massive week as opposed to just having a solid week. Rick, the question I have for you and for a guy like Wan'Dale is, what do you expect the rest of the season? Is this Giants team legit and we're going to keep seeing 6 to 10 target type games for a guy like Wan'Dale?
I mean, when a team gets to 6-1, it's hard to say they're not legit. Like, no matter who you play throughout the first 7 games of the season, if you get to 6-1, you are doing something right. I trust in Dable. We're seeing the first 2 weeks really of Wan'Dale Robinson. Even when he played earlier in the season, Sterling Shepard was around. I think Galladay even played the week 1. Not that they got a lot of targets, but he wasn't the focal point. Now he is becoming the focal point and the security blanket for Daniel Jones, right? He's not going to be the jump ball guy, but he did get an end zone target. He did have a shot at a touchdown today. So he's going to get some targets in there. And I think he's going to dominate the targets for the Giants as we get going through the second half of the season. He's got high draft capital. He seems to be very talented. He's catching what's thrown his way. It's just a case of him just getting a better feel for the NFL because he's only got really 2 games of experience, right? We always talk about the second half of the rookie season as the time when guys come on, and he's already showing that. Now we just need to see him get more comfortable, watch this offense go, because I think Brian Dable, the longer he's got his hands on it, the offense is going to get that much better. Daniel Jones is going to get that much better. There's going to be more touchdowns, and Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is a guy that you're going to be able to flex from now till the end of the season, barring health.
Coach of the year, Brian Dable. Love it.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we're talking Tyler Allgeier, running back from the Falcons. Now, this is a guy you've heard us bring up before. So if you haven't already gotten him, why haven't you? He's getting involved. He's getting significant amount of carries. He's looking better and better as the week goes on. And this Falcons offense is looking better. Marcus Mariota is running it pretty well. We're feeling good about things. Rick, the question I have on this in this situation is, why Tyler Allgeier? Why not Avery Williams or any of these other guys? Do you confident that they're going to keep sticking with the young runner?
I do, until Patterson gets back. And how long is that going to be? And we look at it here, just 16 attempts today. Obviously not the most efficient, but this team, he probably would have got 25 in a normal game because they were getting torched early. They were down early and often. Joe Burrow had 345 yards passing in the first half. They scored 4 touchdowns in the first half. It was 28-7 or something. So you're not going to get the rock a lot in that. And he's just over 4 yards per carry, but he did have 2 like really bad running back matchups to start his starting career in the NFL after Patterson went down. Wasn't the most efficient in those games, but again, as it continues to go, he continues to get up more of the work. And I've always been a fan of his since rookie prep in the offseason. It's just now getting him in there. I think he could be in the same vein as a Dameon Pierce or one of those other rookie running, not Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker, but he's not going to get the receiving work. But if you need a running back to plug into a flex for 10 to 12 points, I think that's what he could bring you as this season goes on until Patterson gets back.
Agreed. And with some of these injuries we've been seeing here recently, guys like this are needed. You need someone that can get you, at least keep you moving forward while you figure out what you're doing, or maybe they just stick with you the rest of the season until Patterson gets back. Either or, you're good with that. All right, next up, we're going to talk Evan Engram, tight end from the Jaguars. This is another one we've been telling you to pick up. He's been producing pretty well this year. The one thing that's missing from his game so far has been the touchdowns, right? If he gets a touchdown here and there, his fantasy production looks even better. But he's still getting consistently targeted, and this team needs him to be successful. They need him to move forward because he's a guy that they're leaning on and trusting. He's getting more and more targets each and every week. Rick, what do you feel about Evan Engram in the spans of the tight end landscape that we're seeing this year?
We talked about it with Cade Otton earlier in the video. If you can get 10 points out of your tight end right now, they're like a tight end 6, 7, 8 on the week, especially with guys like Waller out. It's a cesspool of production. And at least Evan Engram is consistently getting you those 10 to 12 points. And that's what I really want if I don't have those big name guys. I just want somebody that doesn't kill my lineup. And now that him and Lawrence are getting on the same page, he's getting, like you said, I think he's had 7 or more targets the last 3 weeks. He's not dropping the ball like he was last year for the Giants. So it looks like he's back to that tight end that he was prior to 2021 that can get you 80, 90, 100 targets per year and put up 60 catches for 700 800 to 900 yards, just depending on how that goes. We know that he can make some big plays too. And while that hasn't come to fruition yet, I do think that connection gets better and better as this season goes.
Absolutely. And he won't stay out of the end zone. They will get him in the end zone here sooner rather than later. So definitely a target if you need some tight end help. Next up, I don't know why Tyler Boyd is not on every roster. We've been fans of him. Everybody's been fans of him. I've never heard anybody talk bad about him. Good receiver, does nothing but catch everything that's just about everything that's thrown his way. Always productive. I know he's overshadowed by Jamar and T. Higgins and the other players on the team. This dude's just consistent. Rick, you feel comfortable with him as your wide receiver 3 or flex option throughout the rest of this season?
Absolutely. I put out videos before the season saying don't undervalue Tyler Boyd. Second half of last season with Higgins, with Chase, he was still a wide receiver 3. He has the potential for huge weeks as well. We've seen it just like this week, right? Yep. 8 receptions, 155 yards and a touchdown. That's what, almost 30 points. Like that. How many wide receiver 3s have that type of upside? We've talked about it. There's not very many that can get you that upside from the wide receiver 3 on his own team and in fantasy. He was super cheap before the season started. A lot of people are going to say he's gone in my league. Why do you have him on the waivers? A third of leagues do not have him.
Unfortunately, yours might, but maybe it's just because they got smart owners. But this one,
these numbers should be 99, 99, 99 on Tyler Boyd. Just no question about it. He is a wide receiver 3. You just can't fathom why he's not on rosters in 99% of leagues. He's a consistent wide receiver 3 on one of the best offenses in the league.
100% agree. This is definitely a guy that needs to be rostered everywhere
and
played.
Just a small point. Did you know that the Bengals are the first team to have 3 receivers over 400 yards through the first 7 weeks of the season?
That's nuts. You need and want a piece of that offense. That's just what that tells you.
And that is why people don't they see Tyler Boyd and they think Higgins and they think Chase and how can this guy be good? They're doing stuff that no team's ever done with 3 wide receivers, but we're also to a part of the NFL where nobody's thrown this much before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see this type of stuff happen more often, but he should be on every roster. And it doesn't matter if Chase is there and Higgins is there. He might have some weeks where he puts up 5, but we've seen that from Chase as well. We've seen that from Higgins as well, but he's still going to have weeks where he gets you 20, 25, 30 out of a wide receiver 3 that you can get off of waivers in a third of all the leagues right now. That's good.
Got to get him. Next up, obviously, Christian McCaffrey news was wild. People really weren't expecting what happened to happen, but we're in new times. Times have changed. Chuba proved last year that he could handle it if he was put into a significant role. Now, obviously, Carolina's going to be doing some different things. Quarterbacks have been injured, and they were playing PJ Walker. Chuba Hubbard looked good last year. He looked pretty good this week. They got him some pretty solid carries. He touched the ball, obviously, 12 times so far in week 7, and he made the most of it. Got 63 yards, touchdown, got you a couple receptions, 10 yards. Receiving as well. That makes for a nice fantasy week. And if you've lost a running back, or if you've in need of some running back help because things just haven't gone your way, this is a great guy to target. The question I have is, if you're in a league where you're dropping fab or you're using your number 1 waiver priority, is this the guy you target with it?
No. One, I didn't think that Chuba looked that good last year. I wasn't a big fan. I don't even know that he's the best back in the backfield that he's in right now. So that being said, we will talk about his counterpart there in the backfield, but obviously, getting some receiving work has looked better this year than he looked last year, but I still don't know that I trust Panthers offense long term. They made the Bucs defense look a little soft today, but I don't expect that going forward, but maybe getting rid of CMC and Robbie, and we'll see what happens with DJ Moore before the trade deadline. I anticipate them keeping him. He's more of a desperation play for me. He's not somebody that I'm going to trust until I see it a little more, putting him in the lineup on a weekly basis, just because I don't trust that offense. And who knows? Are we going to get Darnold? Are we going to get Baker? Are we going to get PJ Walker? I don't really trust any of them. What that offense is going to do, it does scare me a little bit, but he is a guy that needs to be rostered, but I'm not to the point where I'm throwing him in my lineup.
All right. So you've already hinted to it. We got to talk about the other one. Let's talk Deonta Foreman. Now, this last year helped plenty of championship teams. He played really strong down the stretch for Tennessee when Derrick Henry was injured, and he looked good this week. They gave him the ball a ton of times, 15 carries, 118 yards. He also got targeted a couple times in the pass game. So he, in your mind, then, is obviously the best looking back in Carolina. Is he the one that then you will trust in your lineups and you should go jump after? Is he number one for you if you're targeting a running back on the waiver wire this week?
He is not number one if I'm targeting a running back, but he is the one that I would trust the most out of Hubbard in that Panthers backfield. But I still don't want to throw him in there until I see it shake out a little bit more, because I just don't trust that offense. CMC, the big thing when he got traded, we were all talking about, yes, more touchdown upside, even though he's got more competition for the touchdowns because of getting out of that Carolina offense. I think today was more of an anomaly in regards to Carolina scoring points and against Buccaneers and all of that. I believe the Panthers at 2-5 are one game out of division lead. I think the best is 3-4 in that division. So it's not going well. They haven't been great, but if we see this work out more and both of them getting 10, 12, 15 carries per game, being efficient, then I might trust them a little bit more. Right now, like I said, they do need to be rostered, because if one of them would go down and the other one got all the work, then we're talking about it. But if they're split the work, even 60-40 in a bad offense, I don't trust it as much. So I want to see it a little bit more. Both of them look good today, but what are we going to see going forward? I'm not 100% sure, and I want to wait a little bit, but I don't want to wait too long and miss out on them. Pick your poison, which one you like the most. They need to be picked up, but they don't need to go directly in the lineup next
You're
week.
sitting and waiting and seeing then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We want to talk about Gus Edwards from the Baltimore Ravens. This running back was a bit of a surprise. If you watched our channel, we were pumping the Kenyon Drake hype train because Gus Edwards was still coming back from injury and there wasn't necessarily 100% news that he was going to be starting this week. And then all of a sudden news came out over the weekend. He starts, gets in the game, blows up. 16 carries, 66 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he's been good in the past in this offense, so it's not like we're surprised. Good player, does a good job, was hurt, really unsure. But then you look at the roster ownership, and it looks like everybody forgot this guy was solid in this offense when he was healthy. So this is a guy that we're excited about. You got to go after this guy. If you're like me, this is the guy, the top guy in my priorities when I'm looking. I want to go spend as much as I can to grab him. If I need running back help, I'm targeting Gus Edwards. Rick, what are you doing?
Gus Edwards, I already have him on a lot of my rosters. I had him before the season. I did not trust in J.K. Dobbins' injury. And then we got more bad news about Gus to start the year, and it flipped on us. But I put him on my IR and stashed him. I wasn't dropping him. And then, obviously, the J.K. Dobbins injury and surgery, pretty much the rest of the season, at least fantasy regular season, he's going to be out. I did not expect Gus Edwards to come back, get all the work, and produce like this, because we weren't getting like tidbits of Gus Edwards is looking good. Gus Edwards is getting healthy. Gus Edwards is coming back. That's why we were saying Kenyon Drake. The running back that gets the work in this offense is typically very efficient with high touchdown upside. Even with Lamar Jackson taking some of the rushing touchdowns, they've got the opportunity for multiple touchdown games. If I would have known a week ago that Gus Edwards was going to be back, I would have told you no Kenyon Drake. But with us not knowing the Edwards stuff, it's like they kept it on the DL to surprise people. And I think that's one reason why ESPN 13.1%. Like, if people knew he was coming back, they would have picked him up throughout the week. No matter what we said about Kenyon Drake, people would have known Gus is coming back. Let's get him. I even said on the morning show today that I wasn't starting Gus Edwards because I didn't expect him to come out and get all of the work. I expected him to get eased in like they were doing with J.K. Dobbins, because obviously Gus Edwards had a setback and had to miss the first 6 weeks of the season. I didn't expect him to get all of the work, but he's back, he's healthy, and he's in my starting lineup if I've got him going forward, because he is just, since he came into the league with the Ravens, he's been consistently good at running back for them.
Absolutely. And it's a guy that he's always been good when he plays in this offense. Like, he's never really been a poor producer. They know how to use him. He produces well for them. I don't know why you wouldn't want to target a piece of this offense. So if you have number one waiver priority, make sure you go there and you get him. Spend 60, 70, 80% of your fab if you need to. If you need the help, I have no problem giving as much of my fab or waiver priority to go get him. He's a must-have. He's a must-have at this point. If you have questions, if your leagues are deeper and some of these guys are rostered, drop your comments below, and we'll see you guys in week 9.